All right, looks like we are live. So thanks everyone for joining this week's OpenJS Foundation Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is October 8th. It's, what, 2 p.m. where I am? It's at 1600 UTC, I think. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. The issue for this week's meeting is number 342. And we'll jump right into things. Does anyone have any announcements that they want to share? We haven't had Jory here for a bit, so I'm assuming she's got something.
Yeah, so I have 3. Is that okay? Really quick.
Yeah, that's great, please.
Okay. So just a reminder that this afternoon for y'all is the Standards Working Group meeting. That meets bi-weekly, and you can follow along on the Standards repository for meeting issues and such. That is still scheduled, I believe, and that's in an hour or so after this meeting. Item number 2 is just a note to anyone who might be interested in helping us on the jQuery project with infrastructure. We're going to be having a session on October the 17th to talk about some jQuery infra improvements, and we do welcome anybody interested in that. Item number 3 is just a deep thank you and appreciation to Rachel Romoff for all of her hard work on the NVM announcement last week. And that's it.
Yeah, I second that mention of Rachel. I really appreciate what you've been doing, so thank you. Let me ask quickly, the infrastructure meeting, will that be on the calendar or kind of, you know, publicized in Slack or anything like that, just to I'm sure several people.
I realized just a minute ago that the meeting was posted on a private infra repo, but I will also post it on the CPC repo if there are members of the community who want to help. So,
okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
Great. Do we have any announcements or updates related to Node plus JS Interactive or anything like that? Not to put anyone on the spot. Just curious.
Buy your ticket. Come see us.
It's probably worth mentioning that the submissions, I think the call for submissions for the Collaborator Summit have been open. So start thinking about that too.
Great. Do we have anyone on the call that can update us on that and what, you know, if there's any guidance or anything? If not, maybe we can just take that to Slack or to GitHub or whatnot. So what was my other thought? Any sort of board announcements or anything like that? Anything from there? Is there a meeting recently? I can't recall.
It's the last week of the month, so it's been a couple weeks back. I don't think there was anything. There's certainly nothing new to report since then, other than, like, I'm sure everybody's aware that we have, you know, Robin on board. That's already been announced, so that's really the main. That's the last meeting. Okay.
All right, great. So we will jump into the agenda and get things rolling. So
there's a quick announcement first. Sorry.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, Evan.
Yeah. So last year, this was our first Google Summer Code for Webpack. We had 3 students. Everybody got the project finished, and that was success. So this year we tried to do the same thing, and we had 2 students out of 2 students completing Google Summer Code. That was great, and now we're actually attending the Mentor Summit. Our mentors, 2 of us, are going to Munich in 1 week, and we're gonna collaborate and discuss with other organizations that are participating in Google Summer Code, and to have ideas for next year. And so I just want to give a quick shout out to Stephen Hargrove for his hard work at Webpack as a mentor.
Great, fantastic. Just double check here. I'll promote Aguirre and then we'll get things rolling. Excuse me.
Yeah, I guess
right, so
sorry, the other thing that came to mind on the board front is we did send a couple of documents, the travel fund one and the progression one, to the board for comment. So that is underway.
Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't know if those would be things we'd touch on in agenda items, but thank you for the update, Michael.
Yeah.
Great. So the first agenda item is issue number 335. This is the request for legal advice. I think that we talked about this last week, as Brian mentions here in the last comment. Brian, do you want to kind of give us any context or update or what we need to do next on this one?
Yeah, actually, probably the tag should have been removed on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can close this. Like, effectively, the answer was the foundation guidance is that this is not something that needs legal review. Feel free to choose whichever one you want, right?
Okay. Somebody want to jump in that one?
I can. I'll add a comment and then close it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next issue is 331. This is administering project applications. This was opened 15 days ago by Miles. I think that this kind of, does this lean on a PR that you had open, Michael? Yeah, 321, which is still open, I believe. I'm waiting for it to load. Yeah. And were we, let's see, I'm trying to scroll to the bottom. We've got approvals and some things, comments addressed here. I see Charlie has a few nits from before, but is this, did we send this to the board? Is that where this was left off?
Yes.
Yeah, I see your comment, Michael. You want to give us an update?
So this is the one that, yeah, I basically said, it's been 14 days. We had enough CPC approvals, no objections. So I sent it to the board for comment. And there's a little bit of a discussion, but we don't have closure in terms of that one yet. As soon as I hear back, I will, post that in the issue and then, end up landing it.
Okay, great. So yeah, we just have some comments from Charlie that we're looking to address, and then we can land it. Is that accurate?
I think I already addressed that, but I think we still need we don't have a yay or nay from the board. We just need to continue to follow up on that. And it's at some point, we'll send the hey. If we don't hear any objections, we'll assume it's a yay. So
okay.
Just haven't quite done that yet.
Excuse me. Okay, great. And we are leaving 331 open until that PR lands. Seems fair. Okay, great. So moving on. The next item on the agenda is pull request 330. And excuse me, this is moving the COC proposal to stage 2. Michael opened this 15 days ago. There are a few comments in here, but it looks like there are some approvals. Do you want to give us an update on this, Michael?
Yeah, basically this was just taking what we had at stage 0 and saying, are there more comment suggestions of what we need to do to move it to stage 2 along in the process? I think, the only comment was to add some brackets somewhere. Other than that, I think there's been some approvals, and I'm guessing unless there's any objections, at some point we should decide we have enough. Although a few more might be nice. We only have 4 people who've chimed in from the CPC. Okay. This seems fairly important. And
yeah, and moving it to stage 2, in terms of the process, is going to stage 3 board approval? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think stage 3 is. I think stage 3 is where then, we need to get if it's something that needs board approval, that would be the point where we would go for that. I'd have to double check whether we think this specifically does.
So I guess my point being, moving this to stage 2, people should get their comments in and issues, any concerns addressed, because we're we'd be moving towards board approval from there.
Right.
Okay. All right, just making a note for me to go back and check that as well.
Yeah, we might want to set a, like a target deadline. Like it's been open 15 days. If by the end of the week or something like that, we should say if people haven't objected, we should move it. We should land it. Would be my take.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly give it another week and perhaps bring it up again next week and move it forward. Unless you want to call end of the week some sort of line in the sand.
It's just a matter of how long does it need to be open. If it's good to get more involvement, but again, we don't want to stretch it out forever either.
Yeah. So I encourage everyone to take a look, and then hopefully it's a non-issue by the end of the week.
Yeah.
But if not, we'll definitely address it next week. All right, great. Continuing on, the next issue is 326. This is responsible security disclosures. Toby opened this 20 days ago. I see some comments on it over a few days after that, but not much recently. Does anyone want to give us an update on this and what we need to do to move it forward? Or whatever the next steps may be. I see, Michael, you got some comments. Miles, you've commented on it as well.
I think it's a matter of, it's a suggestion that it would be good to have something in place. Either we need a champion who would start to drive that work, or, the other comments was there are a few groups like the security working group who might have an interest in helping with that, right?
Okay.
I don't know if there's, I'm not sure if it still needs to be on the agenda. Like, unless the cross-project council says we need to prioritize this, let's do something to try and find a volunteer to lead it. There's probably nothing to talk about until somebody does step up, right?
So I have a question about whether this and how this maybe could dovetail with conversations about foundation-wide infrastructure and support. Do we see those things as being sufficiently related that a working group on infra could tackle this and come up with some ideas, or not so much?
I'm not sure. Like infra versus security disclosure, I'm not sure I see the overlap.
Well, just more that, because I think maybe I'm misremembering the issue and maybe I should actually click on it and reread it. But I thought I was recalling that it was about providing like a space to do that, or a pattern or a policy for doing those things. And to me, I don't know, I connected those in my brain to kind of the ops and, that kind of thing. But
I don't think it's so much about technology, but like, I think part of the suggestion is, so we have like Node has a policy that says, here's how you report a bug. And, we have people who are subscribed to HackerOne. I think the suggestion was it'd be nice to have a group at the OpenJS level who would accept reports on behalf of the projects. I don't, you can think of different things. One, the project or the OpenJS Foundation could say we should work on and define, here's the recommended way of handling security disclosures. Then you could say, as a second level, the OpenJS could actually just say, here, we'll handle them for you as a service. Or, because I don't think there's, in terms of infrastructure, it's more something like, HackerOne or an email or something like that, as opposed to anything you're building or doing anything like that. You just need to accept a report and handle it in a safe and responsible way.
So I guess the question I have is there a project that's explicitly asked for this and like said this is exactly what we need and this would be very helpful to us?
Well, Toby is the one who opened it, and I guess at this point there's no specific project, but
Okay. So in that case, I would suggest that we consider like getting, instead of doing something for like someone who's asked for it, having like going to multiple projects in the foundation and asking what would suit their needs. Because if this is something that's intended to support and benefit multiple projects, I want to be sure that we're not just doing something that's like someone had an idea and it sounds like a good idea, but then there might be some implementation details down the road that don't actually meet what the projects in the foundation need.
Yeah, I wonder if being proactive, at least to some extent on this, would be good, because you want to be ahead of some sort of security issue, and if somebody does come across something, have it may be minimal guidance, but have some sort of clear guidance on how the foundation could help handle that. I wonder about. Go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, I think at the very least, some guidance on how, like, here's a good way to accept security disclosures, and that each project should have a way that's publicized. It makes sense. It makes very much sense to me. The next step of actually having the foundation handle it is a whole nother step that I'm not so sure about.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, to Tierney's point, understanding what other projects are doing would be an interesting first step. Like, does everybody have a from our existing projects, an existing, well documented, here's how you responsibly disclose vulnerabilities. And if everybody does, and that's, one way to start looking at it is like, okay, we understand what everybody's doing today. Is it like half the projects don't, and we think they should? And if they all do, are they common, or are we all doing something different? That would give a lot of information in terms of what the policy might look like. But it really, so I think it's good to have an issue. It's just a question of, do we have anybody who's going to drive it forward?
In the interim, while this is being worked out, Michael, would it make sense for us to set up an email alias or a mailing list or something like that, so that there's a default place to give reports if somebody doesn't know where to go or if a project hasn't defined it?
I think that's very interesting, but I'm not sure I would do it in the meantime. Like, it might be like, we'd want to validate that we think we should do that as a, as a step, and then it requires, like, who's going to be on the other end of that email? What do they do when they get a vulnerability for a project?
Presumably it's somebody who can route it to the maintainers. I'm just thinking, somebody discovers something critical on a project tomorrow while this is being discussed. This is, might not be a bad idea to have something in place.
I personally don't feel comfortable like having that as a foundation, like email alias or anything like that, which like steps around how it's typically done in the JavaScript ecosystem at this point, until we have like validated that with the projects.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I think a failsafe isn't a bad idea. A failsafe being an email address.
I guess there's like one thing that we're not, like, we're going in one direction where we're talking about like a program to offer to projects. And I guess like the flip side of this, and I'm not saying that we need to do it, would be whether or not we want to have a level of compliance that's expected of projects. And perhaps this is also something that could be expected of maybe on the impact level projects. But I do think that that lens of looking through it as well is important, if we think that, having clear security process and policy is important for, stable, reliable, open source.
I think that's very fair, especially the impact level approach. I think that's a very fair thing.
And that fits into like what I was saying about a first step is like, here's how we recommend you do it. Because before you have that, it's kind of hard to say, well, you're not complying with it, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need an effort which says, here's our recommended way to do security, just to handle security disclosures for a foundation project.
So the issue I have with that is like, I think it creates a space where that becomes an expectation rather than a suggestion. And that can become a barrier to like enabling more projects to become successful inside of the foundation, and quite possibly even like joining the foundation or considering joining it. There's this massive, watching list of things we need to do. Even if they're like suggestions, a suggestion becomes, a requirement, or it can easily seem like a requirement. So
But
that's just where I want to be careful.
Yeah, and I agree being careful. I think that's like as part of the figuring out what the guidance should be or the ask would be, we'd have to work through those things.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like it could be that, it's really not much of an ask. And like, say, the code of conduct, we think it's important enough that it's worth the ask, right? But you're right, we don't want to tack on every, we need to make that, we need to look at, understand what it is would be asking. And is it, is the cost, because there's always a cost, worth what, worth the benefit.
So I believe, but I could be wrong, that the Node.js security working group, I think, has even like an issue open right now. They have an issue from 2 days ago about tracking security working group in, oh, that's for the conference. I'd have to find it, but I could swear that I saw a conversation at one point where that group was discussing whether or not they were interested in expanding, or maybe a better way of putting it is changing the scope of their effort. Because in the Node.js project, we do have this security group that has been focused on the broader ecosystem and not really Node core. So I mean, I think, Michael, to what you were talking about, I think that group kind of already exists, and we just need to like get buy-in from that group that they're interested in changing their scope.
Yep, that is, yeah. I mean, that is in, those discussions are taking place. I think concretely on this one, what I can do is take an action to post an issue in the existing working group to say, is somebody interested in drafting what the first set of guidelines would be? Like, and it's just a draft as a suggestion that then we could look at, if that makes sense. Because I think like, in my opinion, this is something interesting. If I had unlimited time, I would just go off and write a suggestion, which I don't, but I'm happy to create that other issue which says, hey, does somebody have time to do that? And I think the scope would be, go look at what the foundation, the member projects already have in place, and make a recommendation as kind of like a baseline security, responsible security reporting process and documentation should be. And I'm hoping that somebody will say, oh yeah, that, from the security working group will be, that's something they're interested in doing. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you, Michael, for volunteering to do that. I appreciate it. I'm going to suggest that we skip over the post-bootstrap work agenda item to the additional item that was added via comments on the issue. Miles asked that we look at issue number 317. This is add Travis or GitHub Actions to the org. Miles, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, so we had a linter that was added, and we wanted to set up a CI just so that when new PRs are coming in, we can have that linter run and make sure we're not regressing. There was a request from someone. I had initially suggested Travis for it. Someone else suggested GitHub Actions. To get GitHub Actions running, I just need to opt the org in. I just basically click a button to do so, and just wanted to, didn't want to unilaterally make the decision to click that button. Does anyone have any concerns with turning that on?
Click the button, Miles.
Okay,
no concerns here.
I'm gonna click the button.
You gonna do it live?
Maybe we'll see. It's gonna go as horribly as clicking a button can potentially go. Okay. I've clicked the button. We're in the queue. So let us know as soon as we have access.
My computer just turned off. What?
You're still connected, Joe. Nice try.
All right, great. So then for this issue, are there like next steps that should be taken now that the button has been clicked, or what should we do about this issue?
Anxiously wait.
Okay.
That's what I do after I click buttons.
Yeah, I can follow up the rest on that. I think the next step would be a pull request that includes the GitHub action to run the linter.
Okay, great.
Do I remember right, someone from GitHub commenting at one point about being able to switch that on for us or something that implied that if we're in the queue, because we are who we are, we might have a way of getting a little bit ahead in the queue.
I can reach out and see if I can make it turn on.
My understanding is that it's just kind of like straightforward at this point. I think it's automated, but yeah, nothing to lose by reaching out.
Great. All right, cool. Thank you for clicking the button, Miles. So if we move on or back up to the post-bootstrap work, we can check out that board. And this issue has a couple of boards linked. It's the post-bootstrap work board, which is project board number 3. I'll post the link in the chat. We've got a number of things done here. In the in progress column, we have issue number 160, which is document/define initial process for handling reports. Manil had a PR open, which, if I'm not mistaken, that got merged. Michael has a comment 7 days ago, 271 landed, so closing, but the issue is open.
I might have pushed
Michael,
the wrong button.
Okay.
Unless it looks like it should still be open.
No, it looks like 271 was. Hang on, that color of that tag confused me. Nope, it is merged. So we should close this.
Yep.
Doing it. All right, great. So that moves that one into done. We've got a few things here in the to-do column. Define and document a style guide for Foundation's name. This is got the blocked tag. Trying to open up the full issue here. I think we were waiting for some guidance from the, Joy has a comment from the day before my birthday, blocked, waiting on final IP/TM policy from the board. I don't know if there's any.
We have. Brian, did that get sign off at the last meeting?
It didn't get signed off at the last meeting because we had 1 or 2 discussions that needed to happen.
Okay.
We had those discussions yesterday and should be queuing up the vote here very shortly. I actually just got the language for the vote from legal. So yeah, we should have this pretty soon, hopefully.
Okay. Should I say progress has been happening, nearing the finish line?
That's an appropriate metaphor.
It's the final count.
Yeah. Okay. All right, great. So I just dropped a comment in there so we know next time. Next one on the to-do list here, and I'll remind everyone too, we're going to switch to a private session in about 9 minutes. So we'll just try to get through what we can here and then move to that. The next issue is 291 in the to-do column. This is review foundation infrastructure and we think how we manage it. There are lots of comments here, but nothing in the last month. I know we've been kind of, doing infrastructure discussions, and there's a specific conversation on jQuery infrastructure happening soon. What do we think about this issue moving forward?
So that issue should be related to number 333 because we did, Brian and I made a lot of progress on the action items from that initial conversation. And on number 333, infrastructure improvement follow-up, I'm just sharing the news that we reached sort of a version 1 of that work, and we're interested in having a follow-up discussion in order to move work forward. I suggest that we hold a working group meeting, but I'm open to other ideas, and there's no comment. So I think I would put it to the group. How would you like to see this move forward? How would you like to get this information?
Working group sounds good. I'm curious how things are coming along. Meeting, that is.
Mm-hmm. So the meeting, do people want more meetings? But I can do one right after this. That's a total joke.
Keeping the meeting streak going.
Yeah.
Well, I guess on that one, do we have the draft services published somewhere? I remember there was some work on that, but I just don't remember if we have that like PR'd into our repo or anything like that.
No, I think it's still it's a Google Doc, but I'm not sure why we wouldn't be able to pop a link in somewhere.
I'm just thinking that's a concrete, like for that group, that's a concrete thing of here's the services today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from that we can work on, okay, what more should there be, or
yeah, I'd be fine with that. So put like issue a PR with kind of where we're at and use that as the basis for conversation, and we'll see if there's any, if people want to have a meeting to discuss, or if we want to land that as just like, this is what you got. Okay.
This is what you have now, and even if it lands, but then it's kind of like it's a sort of point to start the discussion on. It's like, this is what you can get today, but where does that fall short for the projects, and what's the next most important thing to try and maybe add into the list, or
yeah. Okay.
Okay. And so that'd be a PR into the cross-project council repo, just outlining infrastructure services that we might be able to help with. Is that accurate? I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, and I think we can also figure out where that wants to live long term, but that's where everybody's eyes are. So that probably is where it needs to be for now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Great. Moving on then. And I dropped a link to that issue that you have open, Joy, and tagged you in it. But yeah, when you create a PR, maybe you could drop that in here as well so we can track it. Great. So moving on, the next one in the to-do items is add admin policy docs. I kind of get a little sad mention this one because I'm the volunteer to move those over from the Node Foundation. I haven't done it yet. But if anyone wants to help, I'd be happy to share that load. It's a light load. I just haven't gotten to it. There are a number of policy docs that we have in the Node Foundation that we could PR over into the cross-project council and discuss, how they fit exactly in. But I will try to get that done soon. But again, if anybody wants to help, feel free. waiting on board/foundation project directed funding. I don't know if we really have anything new on that front. This has been kind of a long conversation. This issue was open January 28th. We only have 4 minutes, so I don't know if we really want to dive into this, but if anybody has any comments, I'd be open to them for a moment.
Yeah, there's no change on this since last week.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's leave that let that sleeping dog lie. Anything on the JSF CLA bot for New Foundation? Anything there you want to talk about?
No.
Yeah, and this is another one that was blocked by getting the new CLA text put in place. After yesterday's call, we've, I believe, resolved the last outstanding comments on that. So, as I'd mentioned earlier, we're ready to take the vote on the legal documents at the board level. And once that's in place, then we can look at figuring out the CLA tooling.
Okay, great. And you've got a comment from not that long ago, so leave this one as is until there's movement. Great. So it's 12:42. I suggest we stop here unless there's anything else anyone wants to touch on that won't take up too much time. And if not, we can just jump into a private session and touch on a couple of things and then call it a wrap.
Groovy.
Yeah, I think we've already covered the things on the items to discuss with the board and the other issues, so we can skip at that from that perspective.
Okay, great. All right, great. So we will move into a private session. I'll stop streaming and I'll ask folks who are not voting or regular members to drop off, and we'll go from there. Thanks everyone from the streaming perspective.